Democratic Congressman Marc Veasey of Fort Worth, thank you so much, and welcome back to Eye on Politics.
Great to see you, Jack.
Good to see you. So let's talk about what Governor Abbott did yesterday in placing on the call. We had been hearing about this, but yesterday he made it a reality. Redrawing of Texas congressional districts by the legislature in the upcoming special session. And he cited a letter from the Department of Justice expressing concerns about your congressional district and three others down in Houston. And the Justice Department called them unconstitutional race-based coalition districts. So you're in the political crosshairs, I guess. So talk to me about your reaction once you saw this.
I think that is the stupidest memo that I've ever seen from the DOJ. And I've been in politics now for a while. I was a congressional staffer. I served 8 years in the state legislature. This is my seventh term in Congress. That was the dumbest memo I've ever heard. You're telling me that a Republican attorney general that leads the DOJ, that's Pam Bondi, that she's alleging that Republicans and use discrimination in drawing the district that I represent and the other districts that Black and brown members of Congress represent in the U.S. House of Representatives. So who are they alleging discriminated? Are they saying Senator Huffman? Like I'm trying to figure out. It was dumb, is what I thought, and I think that is clearly intended to discriminate against communities like the ones that I represent in Dallas and Fort Worth that are largely Hispanic and Black, and the same with the ones in Houston. But it's really kind of mind-boggling what they're saying and what they're alleging that the Republicans, went about using illegal methods to draw these districts. Like it's bizarre. It's crazy. I'm sure that the memo was probably meant to help Greg Abbott out somehow, so he would have an excuse to call this. But I think that it's disgusting that you would call a special session on the same call to deal with the devastating floods that have impacted Central Texas. So I think all of it's crazy. I think all of it's disgusting. I think all of it's completely out of line. And I'm just appalled by it all, to be quite frank with you.
And so let me ask you, because you talked a little bit about this letter sent by the Justice Department to Governor Abbott, and what they say in there is that they cited Justice Kavanaugh ruling back in 2023 that basically said race-based districts are not indefinite into the future, and they basically said, to your point before, while the state's interest when configuring these districts was to comply with a Fifth Circuit ruling prior to a ruling last year, they said their interest in doing so no longer exists, saying there's really no need for this kind of coalition district. So what do you say to that?
Again, I think that's insane. I think that the Republicans drew these maps again. They drew them basically with the intention to protect Republican incumbents, and they didn't even let us see the maps. They let the Republican members of the delegation see the maps. We never Democrats never saw the map. So to allege that there's some sort of illegal discrimination in the way how the maps were drawn. Well, again, they drew them. That's a crazy excuse that they came up with, and it's something that during the session is going to definitely have to be debated. In my opinion, it'd be interesting to see if it comes up during the redistricting hearing when the panel is convened and they come together to debate the merits of this map. But I think that it's crazy. I think it's a power grab. And no one does this in the middle of the decade for no reason at all. Like this is just this crazy, and it just feeds into this whole deal that Trump thinks that he's some sort of a strongman dictator, that you would just say, you know what, we're going to do redistricting, when again the map was agreed upon by most people in the delegation, including every Republican. I just think that it's completely insane, that it's out of line, but it's typical of someone like Greg Abbott that just will let Trump just run right over him. Like, I think it's just I think that it's sad to be that servile and that subservient of a man, that you just allow this other guy just to run over you and dictate to you everything that you're going to do when it comes to the politics of Texas. So I'm disgusted by it, and I think that voters will be too in 2026.
So let me ask you, have you had conversations since this agenda item was released with other members of Congress, the Democrats, certainly those in districts 9, 18, and 29, so Representative Sylvia Garcia, Representative Al Green. Have you had conversations with them, and how, as a group, are you planning to fight back on this?
Everybody's talking about this, but I'll be 100% with you, Jack. The districts that were named were just 4 districts that were named. The Republicans want to redraw this entire map. The rumors that we're hearing in Washington, D.C., is that Trump wants to create 4 or 5 new Republican congressional districts. And so people should not be fooled by any sort of sleight of hand that Abbott is doing, or that the DOJ memo points out by specifically naming these districts. That's just the entryway. That's just the key that's being used to unlock the door to commit mass discrimination in the redrawing of these districts. The districts that they chose, really at the end of the day, won't mean that much in the scheme of things, because this is all about completely redrawing this entire map. I don't think that anyone's district is going to look like it looks now once this is completely done. And I think that a lot of my Republican colleagues should expect to have very rigorous general election matchups after this is all said and done. And quite frankly, I think that a lot of them are going to probably lose in the primary. We know that in Houston, that there were some members down there that had really tough primaries. I would say in the North Texas area, that this sort of frenzy, like doing this sort of mid-decade redistricting for nothing, that it creates a sort of anxiety within the electorate, and I think that the Republicans are going to pay for that anxiety, not just in the general election, but I think that a lot of them are going to have a very tough time getting out of their primaries, because Trump is just putting blood in the water for no reason at all. And you can imagine that these red-hatted Republican MAGA sharks are going to be wondering, hey, what's in this water? And they're going to want a piece of this action, and that they're going to have very ugly, nasty primaries.
So let me ask you, have you had discussions with Republican members of the Texas delegation since this came out?
I have not had any discussions with the Republican members of the delegation. As you know, there's a lot of legal discovery and what have you that's to be had during these redistricting sessions and special sessions, and most people don't want to talk about it because no one wants to be on record saying that they said one thing and have it be interpreted as another. And so I have not talked to any of the Republicans about it at all. It's my understanding that none of them want to do it, and none of them want to be in these new lean districts that are going to be created. That they like the districts that they had. They all signed off on these districts. The one that were in Congress at the time, they all signed off on them. They're all fine. None of them think that this that there's any sort of discrimination. They said that when the districts were drawn. So I think that they're probably like Democrats. But again, when you're 100% subservient to Trump and you just let them roll over you, I don't think that any of them are going to publicly say anything. But I bet you if you talk with some of them on background, that a lot of them would say, yeah, this is a bunch of bull.
So you pointed out earlier reminding everybody that you served 8 years in the Texas legislature. And have you had any conversations with members of the legislature who were there with you at the time and those who have come since then, since this new agenda came out?
I have talked with members of the legislature, and they really don't know much either. They had been hearing rumors, just like we had, that there was going to be a special session called, that Donald Trump had drawn a map, and that he was dictating to Greg Abbott exactly, what he wanted to see in a map, and that he wasn't going to take any sort of changes, and that he wasn't going to allow for there to be any sort of real debate about these maps. That he wanted what he wanted. And that's basically all that we've heard. They have really kept this thing a secret. There hasn't been a lot of transparency. There hasn't been a lot of hearings held around the state. It's been absolutely nothing. It's been quiet. And I think that because, Pam Bondi is the type of character that really doesn't run an independent AG shop. She's someone that is basically a political arm of MAGA and the Trump political machinery. And so they probably figure that she's doesn't care if there's going to be any hearings, that they're going to that she's going to allow them to do whatever they wanted to. Remember, this is the same attorney general that tried to cut a deal with Eric Adams, and had some of her own prosecutors decide to resign. And so there are a lot of politics that are at play at the DOJ. This is a DOJ like we've never seen before under any Democratic or Republican representation, and it's just a total circus and a clown show. But it's a clown show with people that have real power, and they are about to try to abuse that power when it comes to redrawing this map.
And one other question I had is, so obviously you wait to see what happens with this, and then seems like you're going to file a legal challenge depending on how your district looks in a new map.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, we will wait to see exactly what everything looks like. No one knows. Well, like I said, what they did was just basically open the door for redistricting, but no one knows exactly what this is going to look like. So for anyone to say they're going to file suit right now, I mean, it's hard to say. No one knows what their districts are going to look like. I think that some of the districts that they ultimately try to eliminate aren't even listed on there. So I think that there are only a handful of districts around the state that are truly not going to look that much differently than they look now, that are represented by Democrats. But I think the other ones are going to be subject to a great amount of change and variation. And so I'm urging everyone to really stay tuned, pay very close attention to this, because this has very serious implications for Texas. And it goes against what our Constitution is all about. Our founding fathers expected us to redistrict once every 10 years, and they didn't want it to be like some sort of communist dictatorship, to where when some guy thinks that he's going to lose power, he can just change the rules every 2 years. That's not what they wanted, but that's exactly what Trump, Greg Abbott, and Pam Bondi are doing right now.
I asked Senator Cruz about this scenario several weeks ago, and he said it's perfectly legal, and that, obviously without seeing any of the new maps, he said redistricting more than once is perfectly legal. But I think to your point before about the maps, once you start tinkering with one district, it does kind of impact a lot of other districts nearby. And like you said, perhaps the entire state's going to look drastically different.
Yeah, the entire state will look different. And the thing that really bothers me about Senator Cruz, and he knows better, he's a Harvard educated attorney, and he knows better. He likes to always talk about, oh, I'm a strict constructionist. I'm a strict constructionist. And he likes to do all of that and tout all of that. But then all of a sudden, when it comes to actually abiding by what the founding fathers says, which is to do an enumeration at the beginning of the decade, and to do redistricting around that, then all of a sudden, he wants to be some sort of an activist. And so I'm sick of those guys that like to drape themselves in the Constitution and talk about the founding fathers this and the founding fathers that, but then all of a sudden, when they need to and they need to be, some sort of contortionist, they can all of a sudden say, well, no, we're going to be judicial activists and say you can do redistricting whenever you want to. I'm sick of all of that. I'm tired of these guys lecturing about the Constitution, this and Constitution that, and trying to pretend like there's some sort of a strict father when it comes to the Constitution, and there's some sort of a standard bearer when it comes to the Constitution. They're just full of crap, and they're just political activists that don't give a damn about the Constitution because they don't even want to exercise their legislative oversight that the Constitution gives the legislative branch to check the executive branch. They're subservient. They're flunkies. They are nothing but go with the flow whenever some leader tells them to. And so, no, I just that I'm tired of getting lectured by guys like that. They have no standing when it comes to actually teaching us anything about the Constitution or the founding fathers.
And Congressman, I know we have talked about very political process of redistricting. Of course, as you brought up before, this comes during the same special session that the legislature is going to have to deal with this god-awful, horrific flooding that we've seen
Yeah.
take place in the Texas Hill Country. And I'm just wondering, you've seen it play out this past week. What do you make of just the tragedy that has taken place?
I think it's terrible. I think the tragedy that's taken place is terrible. I think that it could have largely been avoided, and I think that we need to have an investigation. I got to tell you, Jack, I don't give a damn if Trump and Abbott are homies and that they are friends. I really don't. I don't care. Abbott's people said right after the flood that it was because of the National Weather Service why this happened the way that it did and why the response was the way that it was. And that FEMA was also slow to react because I think Nome had something, personal going on that she was doing. Um, if that's the case, I want to know about it. There needs to be an investigation. We need to find out exactly what happened for these families, for this region. My heart and prayers continue to go out with them, but I don't care if Abbott and Trump ever speak to each other again. I really don't. The truth about what happened, and we need to know whose fault it was, and we need to know how we can fix it to make it better. I personally think that Abbott's people were probably correct in pointing the finger at Trump when they said that it was the National Weather Service because of the drastic cuts he made. I was one of those people saying that, look, you can trim the federal workforce, but it needs to be done with a scalpel and not a hammer. I was one of many people saying that. And if the drastic cuts that took place at National Weather Service played a role in this, then we need to know that. But Abbott trying to protect their friendship and not point the finger that way, no, that is absolutely no good. We don't need that. We need transparency. We need to know the truth, and we need to find out what happened so people can be able to have some closure behind this. That football deal that he put out there, that football analogy, that was absolutely nonsense and crazy. And I can't believe that he did that. I don't care about that. I don't care about that. And again, I don't care if him and Trump are friends or and they ever hang out again. Not my problem. I want to know what happened. I want to know why it happened, and I want to know how we can prevent it from ever happening again. Period. End of story.
Well, I did want to say one thing. I did watch one of the early news conferences in which the head of the Texas Division of Emergency Management, Chief Nim Kidd, spoke. And what I heard him say was that they didn't realize that amount of rain was going to come down that quickly. They did obviously take the threat of flooding in the region seriously because they said that they were there 2 days beforehand. But I went back and I looked because I was curious myself, what were the warnings from the National Weather Service, in the hours leading up to it. They did put out an alert on Thursday, July 3rd in the afternoon, and then overnight, starting at 1:15 in the morning, they had all these alerts. And there was an interview I saw with the National Weather Service union who did complain of cutbacks before, but said those cutbacks had nothing to do with this particular storm because they had more people in the National Weather Service office in New Braunfels than were scheduled. I saw either 4 or 5 people were in place in that office overnight instead of the normal 2. But to your point, I think that everybody who I've spoken to and just who's spoken at the podiums during the various news conferences this week said there will be an accounting for exactly what happened and
Yeah.
how is there going to be a way to prevent this from happening again.
Right, right, absolutely. And you know that AccuWeather, which is a private company that does weather reporting, they said that they actually had issued warnings and had concerns prior to what the National Weather Service had. And so it's why we need to have a thorough investigation and look at all of this. And there needs to be transparency behind exactly, you know, what occurred and why it occurred the way that it did to make sure that it never happens again. But it needs to be transparent and no one needs to try to hide anything and no one needs to try to make one party look better than the other. We need to know the truth about what happened.
We will leave it there. North Texas Congressman Marc Veasey, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Good to see you, Jack.